SB9 is probably one of the most exciting and beneficial pieces of legislation that's been passed in California for homeowners and real estate investors. I'm Lauren Capwell with Sage Real Estate, and today we're going to look at all of the essential things that you need to know about this new law so that you can increase the value of your property, add rental income, and even sell off part of your land without selling the whole thing. So today we're going to talk about who SB9 is for, what the restrictions are, and all of the possibilities that it creates. So let's dive right in. Let's start with who SB9 is for. This bill is for people who own a property that is zoned for a single family residence. If the property that you own is zoned for multifamily, 2 units or more, then this bill is not for you. So if you do own a property that's zoned for a single family residence, there are other restrictions, which we're gonna get into later, but let's talk about why this bill is so exciting and some of the possibilities that it creates. The first possibility that it creates comes with the first part of the bill, which deals with building a second house on your lot. If your lot is large enough and it meets the rest of the criteria, then you can actually build a second unit on your property. And now this is separate from an ADU. There's already legislation that allows you to build an ADU, but this is separate because you could actually build a separate second home on your property, and there are some financing and tax benefits that could go along with that. So the second part of this bill that's really exciting is that you can potentially, if your lot is large enough, split it off into 2 separate lots and sell part of your land completely separately. The third thing that's really exciting is when you combine the first and the second part of the bill, which is both building 2 units and splitting your lot. If you first split your lot into 2 lots, now you have 2 separate lots and each one is allowed to have 2 units on it, which could create a total of 4 units on what was a single family lot. Now, this creates a lot of possibilities for things like cash flow, increasing your property value, greater appreciation. So basically a really awesome way to build your wealth in real estate. While all of this sounds really exciting, and it is, there are a lot of restrictions in SB9. So SB9 was passed at the state level, which means that all of the restrictions that are in SB9 at the state level apply to all of the states that are in California. In addition to that, every city can add more restrictions on top of the original SB9 legislature. And because SB9 is so new, it was just rolled out in January 2022 of this year, this is rapidly changing. The cities are trying to figure out how they want to implement it in their cities to maintain the same character of the city. And the reason that there's so many restrictions is because the state wants to make sure that people aren't doing anything weird that would really damage the character of the different cities in the state of California. So for example, there's a lot of restrictions about lot sizes, setbacks, things like that. It's because they don't want to end up with a bunch of tiny homes or tiny lots or something that would cause problems in the future. They really want to make sure that the quality of the housing stock is maintained. So with that being said, let's dive right into it. With part 1 of the bill, this deals with building 2 houses on a lot that is zoned for single family. As I mentioned, a lot of restrictions, and let's talk about those right now. The first restriction is that it needs to be in an urban area. So if you're somewhere way out in the country, this probably doesn't apply to you. The purpose is to responsibly increase the number of duplexes in areas that are crowded. If you're out in the country, not the right bill for you. Your property cannot be in a historic district or on a historic register. That's prohibited by SB9 in order to maintain the character of the neighborhood. If you have an HOA, they can still enact a restriction that prohibits SB9 overall. So make sure that if you have an HOA, make sure you check with them to see whether or not SB9 is allowed. Say all that's met, when you go to build each house on your property must be at least 800 square feet. There are a lot of tenant protections in place. So if you currently have a tenant that's living in the single family unit that you own, SB9 has a lot of tenant protections, including the affordability covenant. So it cannot disrupt. Building of the second property cannot disrupt an affordability covenant, a rent control agreement. There's additional protections if the tenant has been there for at least 3 years. If you've used the Ellis Act, there's rules about the number of interior walls that you can disrupt. So say, for example, if you have a big single family home and you just want to build a dividing wall right down the middle and create a duplex that way, There are rules about the number of interior walls that you can disrupt while you're doing this to make sure that the tenant is not disrupted. If your lot already has an ADU or a JDU on it, like the ADU and the JDU would count towards the total number of habitable units that you have on your property. And so you probably wouldn't qualify for SB9 because they would look at it and say you have a house and an ADU, you already have 2 units on this lot, you can't have any more. So if you happen to live in an area where there is fire or seismic hazard, the city also has the option to stop the project for health and safety reasons. While I know that this is a lot of restrictions, there is one good thing, and that is there is no requirement for parking. The state has not acted any requirements for parking within SB9. The cities still have the option to add additional parking requirements if they so choose. So if your property meets all of those conditions, then you probably qualify for SB9. So that's it for part 1, adding a second unit. Now let's talk about part 2. Part 2 of the legislation allows you to split your single lot into 2 separate lots that can be sold separately. Now, there's also a lot of restrictions on how the lot splitting can be done, starting with everything from that we just discussed. All the restrictions for part 1 also apply to part 2, and then there's additional restrictions on top of that. One of the major additional requirements to split the lot is that you must own or occupy the property. So that's different from the first part of the law. The second part of the law says you must own or occupy if you want to split your single lot into 2 separate lots. You must sign an affidavit saying that after the date of the lot split, and this is the date that the lot split is recorded, from that date, for the next 3 years, you will live and occupy one of those lots. If you split the lots, you can sell off one lot immediately, so long as you continue to occupy the other lot for the next 3 years. So there are some additional rules about lot splitting, and most of these deal with the dimensions of your lot. The first dimensional restriction about lot splitting is that the lot split needs to be fairly equal. Ideally, as close to 50-50 as possible. Really, 60-40 is the biggest size difference that you can have between the 2 lots. The second rule is that the resulting lots need to each be at least 1,200 square feet. So if your original lot is less than 2,400 square feet, probably don't qualify to use SB9. So the resulting lots also need to have access to the public right-of-way. That's another requirement of SB9. You cannot do the lot split on adjacent lots. So if you own 2 lots side by side that are zoned for single family, you can SB9 lot split one of the lots, but you couldn't SB9 the one next to it. Now, if you owned 3 lots in a row, you could do SB9 on the 2 outside lots, but not in the middle lot. That's an additional restriction. You also can only use SB9 one time on a lot. So once a lot has been split once, those 2 smaller lots cannot be split again. So in addition to this, these are the requirements and restrictions that are happening at the state level. The cities have the option to impose additional requirements and restrictions. For example, in Lakewood, one of the things they're looking at is that there's like a certain amount of lot frontage that's needed just for things like garbage collection. So in Lakewood, like they have rules that give them a lot more garbage cans than, for example, here in Long Beach. So the certain amount, like the amount of lot frontage that you need that faces the road, they're gonna have restrictions and requirements there. So every city is gonna be a little bit different. Make sure that you're checking with your city council, see what the ordinance is for the city that you live in. So in Long Beach and a lot of other urban areas around California, the shape of the lots tends to be more rectangular, with the length of the rectangle like facing away from the street. And so a lot of the lot splits are not actually going to be vertical lot splits that would split it into 2 very skinny lots. A lot of the lot splits are going to need to be a flag lot where you're splitting it horizontally and there is a driveway that runs up the side that gives access to the lot in the back. That's probably how most of this is going to be implemented in Long Beach and the surrounding areas. So that is it for part 2 of the bill, splitting lots. And now we're going to show you how it works when you combine parts 1 and 2 together. If you have a single family home on a big lot and you meet all of the requirements for part 1 and all of the requirements for part 2, what you can do is you can split your lot first. So now you have 2 separate lots. You can build an additional unit on the lot with your single family home, and you can build 2 units on the new lot that you just created. So you basically turn your single family home and single lot into 4 new units of property that are going to bring you income, generate cash flow, and also dramatically increase the value of the real estate that you own. And that's it. That's everything that you need to know, all of the essentials about SB9. If you liked this video, make sure that you click that subscribe button below. Click the notification bell to get notified every time we upload a new video about increasing your wealth through real estate. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And that's it. We'll see you guys next time.